Hey everybody in internet land, this is the Mother Brain of the Mother Brain Files, and once again right here on Coast Blog. I'm here today not to give you wrestling predictions, but I'm here today to give you a movie review. The review that I'm going to do today is The Expendables 2, which I just got back from seeing actually this afternoon on its opening day. The first Expendables came out in 2010, and I remember the build-up for that film was very interesting because at first everybody thought it was just going to be like a triple threat kind of deal with Stallone and Jason Statham and Jet Li teaming up as a group of mercenaries taking on a dictator in South America. But then when the word got out that Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to make a cameo, Bruce Willis was going to make a cameo, and Dolph Lundgren was going to be in it, and all these other 80s action stars were coming together, it was like, what's happening here? This is like the ultimate dream. But I think Expendables 2 really gets the action fans more giddy now, because you not only have the addition of Jean-Claude Van Damme as the villain, but you also have Chuck Norris in there spoofing, his whole internet sensation that's been happening the past few years with the infamous Chuck Norris facts. So that was interesting to see him back on the big screen for the first time since, I don't know, Sidekicks? Let's get into the review. So basically you have a film that's supposed to take place right after the first movie, where Bruce Willis's character is obviously ticked off because, Stallone and his group didn't quite fulfill their commitment to his character. They basically took the money that he paid them to go after the bad guys in the first film, but they just went off and did the mission themselves without Willis's involvement. So now he's pissed off. He wants his money back. So he puts them on another mission involving a tracking device, which ultimately leads to some nuclear weapons, which they have to receive. And basically Jean-Claude Van Damme is supposed to be a rival mercenary who comes in, ambushes the Expendables, and takes the device that they were after. And in the process of doing so, they end up killing one of their men, which we won't spoil here. And so it becomes the ultimate revenge plot with the Expendables tracking down Van Damme and his crew all the way out to this very small country where they are running basically a mining town, and they're taking all the husbands and making them work in this mine, and all the women and children are pretty much being enslaved and living in fear until the Expendables come, and of course they wreck hell and save the day. Let's get into the things that worked. So I would have to say, again, the scale of the movie was much bigger, the stakes were much bigger, and you also have the sense that these guys are having fun making the movie. I think the first Expendables was Stallone trying to take this particular material with this Dirty Dozen type of style of action, and he was trying to be pretty serious, having his sense of symbolism and a lot of context going on. Of course, the infamous Mickey Rourke soliloquy midway through the movie, which a lot of people kind of laughed at, even though it was supposed to kind of highlight Mickey Rourke's performance in the first film. And sadly, he's not in this, but, you can't have everybody. There'll probably be twice the budget to get more action stars in it. But it was definitely, I didn't really miss Rourke. I didn't miss Jet Li as much, because Jet Li, even though he's been advertised in the movie, he's only in there for maybe the first 10 minutes and then he's out. Or almost everybody had their moment to shine. Jason Statham still had some great fight scenes in there, especially the fight scene he had with Scott Adkins at the end was mind-blowing, I would have to say. But the scene in the trailer where he's in the monastery and starts whipping out the knives, that was definitely one of the best scenes in the movie. The fact that it was fun, it didn't take itself seriously, it allowed more room for some of these characters to be a little bit more engaging than they were in the first film, especially Dolph Lundgren, who in the first movie was the crazy guy who goes rogue, but now, he gets some of the best one-liners in the movie. You get to see more about his character. They kind of injected Dolph Lundgren's real life as an MIT grad into his character, so he definitely has a lot of scene-stealing moments, as well as Terry Crews and, the rest of the cast. The best performance, or at least the one that I was kind of taken aback from was Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now we know he's been kind of in the direct-to-DVD obscurity for the last several years, probably for a whole decade, because of his drug problems and just bad taste in projects. But I think in this case he really surprised me as the bad guy in Expendables 2. You know, he wasn't just another baddie designed for Stallone to face off at the end with. Like, he was very scary, and but there was something very cool about him. Like, he delivered his lines in a way where he didn't have to struggle with his accent like he used to do in Bloodsport and all the earlier movies he made. You know, he was very impressive. He still did his thing. Didn't really fight that much, but his presence there was enough to be menacing and dark, and I think it totally eclipsed Eric Roberts in the first film, who was more the typical suit and tie type of bad guy, and I think that's what the first film was missing. Stallone didn't direct this film. He gave the job to Simon West, who is best known for Con Air and The General's Daughter, and it just recently did the remake of The Mechanic with Jason Statham, which I actually enjoyed for a Charles Bronson remake of all things. He was pretty consistent with keeping Stallone's style intact from the first movie. I didn't get any sense that, oh, he was trying to copy what he did in Con Air. You know, it was just basically, he was doing a balls-to-the-wall action movie, and, you know, trying to make sure it delivered on every front, and you had characters that you were engaged in at the same time have a tremendous amount of blood and explosions and, you know, just about everything. You know, I mean, it's not one of these movies that you have to intellectualize. You know, it's like what you see is what you get. You check your brain at the door, you have your popcorn, your soda, and you just enjoy the 100 minutes that you get sitting there and watching these guys kick ass on screen. The one thing I really loved was the big climax at the end when the Expendables and Schwarzenegger and Stallone and Willis and Norris all get together and they kick ass all over the place in this big airport, and it's just like, I mean, I would have to laugh when I was in the theater, but I laughed in a good way because I was enjoying myself and I just felt so giddy. You know, it was like the days when me and my cousin would take our action figures, like take our Batman and Ghostbusters and our Spider-Man figures and, you know, get them all together. And, you know, while you had the Avengers this year where you had all those Marvel characters together on the big screen, I feel like this was kind of the same deal, except with real action heroes that we all grew up with since the late 70s, early 80s. So, you know, when those guys get together, especially that big money shot where they're all standing together, running from a chopper and shooting up at the camera, you know, it's like that fantasy that you've been drooling for since, I don't know, 1985, when all these guys were around, or 1988 when Bruce Willis had Die Hard out. Which leads me to the negative side of the film. And again, you would figure the negatives would just be the fact that it's a dumb action movie, but there's some valid criticisms that I had with it. Again, I did feel that I wasn't too engaged with every character in the movie. I didn't feel that the characters from the first movie really grew, other than Dolph Lundgren's character, ironically enough, because you learn more about him, but the other guys pretty much were who they were. The other problem I had with it was the action, in the sense of how the movie was originally shot PG-13, because the plan was they wanted to get more of the kids that snuck into the first movie to see it now without having to go through, you know, having photo IDs at the ticket counter. But of course there was a big uproar over that. Everybody wanted the standard R rating, so Stallone finally gave in and said, okay, we're going to make it R-rated. And they basically went back in, and if you see the film closely, there's a lot of CG blood that's been added after the fact. And there was CG blood in the first movie, but it feels like they just kind of slapped it on this film as if there was no intention to shoot it that way, and then they just decided to throw it in at the last minute because they wanted to get that R rating. And, you know, it kind of like made it a little bit more cartoonish at times. And I would also have to say that the lack of foul language was also odd in a way because it just made some dialogue very cheesy to listen to. You had Liam Hemsworth coming in as basically the new young Expendable. It seemed like it was designed to just bring in the young crowd, especially young girls who know he's the next Mr. Miley Cyrus. So, you know, I guess that's why he's in there. I mean, I didn't mind his role, but I wasn't blown away by it. To rate The Expendables 2, I would say I would give it roughly 3 stars. I do think it surpasses the original by a long shot. It's very entertaining to watch. It doesn't have the most original plot, and not everything about it clicks. If you're expecting a story that's going to advance like The Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, where the characters grow and evolve, you're not going to get that here. But what you will get is a great moment in cinematic history to see all these major action stars come together. You know, it's like We Are the World, but with bullets and blood, you know. And it's probably something we won't see again, despite the fact that Stallone and Schwarzenegger have another collaboration set to come out next year called The Tomb, which will finally get those two guys, just them alone, to finally team up and kick some ass. I don't recommend bringing the women out there unless they love to see big muscle guys kick ass, but if you are definitely a big 80s action lover or a fan of any of these guys, it's definitely worth the money to see on the big screen. And it's much better than the first film. If you were discouraged by the first movie by any means, this should satisfy your tastes in the genre. This is the Mother Brain doing his Expendables 2 review. You can check out the website for Coast Blog as well as my Twitter page to see our blogs, see our pictures, reviews of pretty much everything. And hopefully I'll see you again soon.